When you think about an organization's mission, do you ever wonder, is it something they invent for themselves, or is it something they discover? Well, today we're diving into a really powerful Latin phrase that gets right to the heart of that question. It's called Missio Dei, and it totally reshaped how countless groups think about their purpose in the world.
It all boils down to this one single question. Whose mission is it anyway? Is mission a program that the church owns and operates? Or is it something, well, something infinitely bigger? This question really captures the core tension of the whole idea.
And the theological answer to that question is Missio Dei. It literally means the mission of God. And the idea behind it is actually pretty simple, but it is so profound. It says that the church's mission isn't some independent project it came up with. Nope, it's just a small part of God's much, much larger work in the world.
Now, saying the church is just one part of God's work, that's a pretty radical idea, especially when it was first introduced. So let's really break down what a huge shift in perspective this concept actually is.
Okay, so here's the fundamental shift. It's the difference between mission being an activity the church has, like a program or a department, and mission being part of who God is. It's what God does in the world, and the church is simply invited to join in on what He is already doing. See the difference? It's huge.
Now, you might think this is a new idea, but it actually has some pretty ancient roots. The modern version of it, though, well, it exploded onto the scene at a very specific and dramatic moment in history, right after the Second World War.
The phrase itself actually goes way back. You can find thinkers like Augustine and Aquinas using it to talk about the inner life of God. But then, in 1932, a theologian named Karl Barth brought it back, making this bold argument that mission belongs to God, period. This all came to a head at a really critical conference in 1952 in a small town called Willenhall.
And to get what happened at Willingen, you have to understand the mood at the time. This was not an optimistic era. The Cold War was freezing everything. Missionaries had just been kicked out of China. There was this deep sense of crisis in the air, this feeling that the old ways of doing mission just weren't working anymore.
So out of this crisis, these two enormous paradigm shifts came to the surface. First, God is the author, the originator of mission, and the church is just a participant. And second, mission isn't just some activity God does. It actually flows from the very nature of who God is as a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
But, okay, here's where things get really complicated. Everyone at that conference agreed to use the term Missio Dei, but they could not agree on what it actually meant in the real world, and this led to a massive divide.
So you basically got two competing camps. On one side, you had a church-focused view. They said, yes, it's God's mission, and it happens through the church's specific work of evangelism. But on the other side, you had a world-focused view. They argued that God is at work everywhere, in politics, in history, and secular movements, and the church's job is just to figure out where and join in. For them, the world provides the agenda.
And just to give you a sense of how radical that world-focused view was, listen to this quote from one of its main champions, J.C. Hokendijk. He said the church was basically just an appendix to what God was really doing in the world. An appendix? That was a truly revolutionary thing to say back then.
Now, the other side, of course, was having none of that. For them, the church wasn't an appendix. It was a central instrument, a tool that God specifically designed to carry out His mission. So you can see the conflict, right? It all comes down to the role of the church.
And look, this wasn't just some friendly theological squabble over coffee. This disagreement caused one of the biggest splits in the Western Church since World War II. It drew a really sharp line between what we now know as the ecumenical and the evangelical movements.
So, with this massive conflict raging, how did they ever find a way forward? Well, the answer was actually right there in front of them the whole time. It came from going back to that third big idea from the Willingen Conference, the Trinitarian nature of mission.
The solution was this subtle but incredibly powerful change in wording. The goal wasn't a church-centered mission, where the institution is the star of the show. No. The goal was a mission-centered church, a community that orients its entire existence around God's ongoing mission in the world. This Trinitarian view brings everything into balance. You see, mission starts with the Father's love for the world. It's modeled perfectly by the Son Jesus in His life and His sacrifice. And it's empowered by the Holy Spirit, who has worked both inside the church and far beyond it. It's not one or the other. It's all three working together.
Okay, so that is a whole lot of theology and a lot of history. But why does any of this actually matter for us today? What are the real-world practical takeaways from thinking about mission this way?
Well, for starters, Missio Dei is a huge reality check against mission becoming all about human achievement or making our own institutions look good. It brings together things we often split apart, like social justice and evangelism, under one big umbrella. And maybe most importantly, it shifts our focus away from our activities and our brilliant plans and onto God's character and His agenda. Mission stops being just another program and becomes the entire reason for being.
So, we're going to leave you with this one question to think about. If you really truly believe that mission is God's work first, and that our role is simply to join in, well, how does that change everything about how you see your purpose in the world? Thanks for joining us.